This time on Documentify TV. For a long time, the story of North America seems pretty simple. Humans arrived around 13,000 years ago. They left behind distinctive stone points, and those people became known as the Clovis culture. But in South Carolina, along the Savannah River, there's a site called Topper, and Topper has become one of the most controversial places in American archaeology. Why? Because below the accepted Clovis layer, archaeologists found something unexpected. They found chipped chert, and nearby they found carbonized plant remains in a dark stain in the sediment. When those remains were tested, the dates came back near the upper limit of radiocarbon dating, around 50,000 years old. Now stop right there. If those chipped stones are really tools, that would mean people may have been here tens of thousands of years before Clovis. But that brings us to the real question. Are these actually tools? Or are they just broken rocks that only look like human-made? That's the entire mystery. Topper is a real archaeological site, and its Clovis material is accepted. That part is not the controversy. For years, archaeologist Albert Goodyear and his team recovered thousands of clear Clovis-era artifacts there. So the site matters, but then they kept digging deeper. They went down into the older Pleistocene terrace sediments, and in those lower layers, they found clusters of chipped Allendale Coastal Plain chert. Some of the pieces look tool-like, small blades, small scrapers, and one larger piece nicknamed Big Red, which appeared to be a core of a stone used to strike off smaller flakes. On the surface, that sounds huge. But this is exactly where the argument begins. Topper is not just an ancient site. It also sits in a natural chert quarry landscape. In plain English, there's a lot of brittle stone there. And that matters because nature can break stone too. Pressure, erosion, natural cracking, and other geological forces. All of that can produce sharp flakes and broken edges. Sometimes, those broken rocks can look surprisingly similar to very simple tools. And that is why critics say some of the deepest Topper pieces may be geofacts, not artifacts. Geofacts. In other words, stones broken by nature, not people. So now the debate gets very specific. Supporters of the early date claims say some of these pieces show patterns more consistent with human action. They point to certain fracture features and what are called bend-break pieces. Critics answer with a fair challenge. At a site already full of naturally broken chert, how do you prove simple-looking stone was actually shaped by human hands? And then there's the carbonized material. Does it come from human hearth? Or could it be the result of natural burning in an ancient landscape? Because if the burning was natural, then the deep layer may still be very old, without proving that people were there making tools. So what do we really have? We have a real site, a real accepted Clovis horizon, a very old deeper context, and a serious argument over whether the chipped stones in that deeper context were shaped by people or by natural processes. And that's what makes Topper so interesting, not because the case is settled, but because it isn't. If the pro-Topper interpretation is right, then this site could push human activity in North America far earlier than most people still imagine. But if the critics are right, then Topper is a perfect example of how geology can create convincing illusions in the archaeological record. So for now, the question remains open. Are these 50,000-year-old stone tools, or are they just rocks doing a very good impression of tools? But Topper isn't the only site pushing back the timeline, and the evidence found buried in the mud at White Sands points to a completely different kind of ancient journey. That's it for today's video, folks. See you next time, right here on Documentify TV.